guys, welcome back to BellaVet. Yeah, so the title is not clickbait. I really did get into vet school a year early and I dropped out of college. Okay, now let me explain. So it was really all my mom's idea. She is an accountant and she's always looking for ways to save a little money, and in this case a little bit of time. And I should probably preface that I am in the US, and at least in the US, you graduate high school usually around age 18, and then you go on to college or undergrad, and there you typically spend 4 years, get a bachelor's degree, and then you go on to vet school, stay another 4 years, get a doctorate degree. In my case, a doctorate of veterinary medicine. And when you're in undergrad and getting your bachelor's, you tend to have two types of classes. If you want to go to vet school, you'll have prerequisite classes that you need to take before you apply to vet school. And then you'll also have classes that count towards your major. In my case, I was animal science. And sometimes those classes overlap, and sometimes they don't. Well, my mom was doing some research one day and she found out that some vet schools actually don't require a bachelor's degree to apply, meaning that if you took all of your prereq classes in a row and didn't take major classes, then you could finish that up in about 3 years and then apply to vet school and then just go to vet school if you get in. And at first, when my mom told me this, I was pretty hesitant because taking your prereqs back to back like that is pretty tough. Usually if you're going for a 4-year degree, you kind of space them out with your major classes, which tend to be, for the most part, a little bit easier. And so then you don't have such, heavy course loads. And yeah, so I was a little hesitant at first because I was worried if I took super hard classes back to back that I wouldn't be getting the grades that I needed to get into vet school. And at this time, I was a freshman in college. It was my very first semester, and things weren't going too well. I failed my first 2 college exams. I believe I got like a 53 on one of them and like a 56 on the other, and those were my math class and my chemistry class. And so that really scared me that I wasn't going to be able to get the grades that I need to get into vet school. And at that point, my mom was just kind of like, okay, no worries, we don't have to do this. Just kind of try your best to adjust to college, and if you feel up to it, we can talk about it again later. And during that semester, I had to completely change the way that I was studying, and that for me involved a lot of rewriting my notes over and over and over again, and that's how I really turned the corner grades-wise. And yeah, once I adjusted to college, I actually ended up doing really, really well my second semester. I actually 4-pointed my second semester, and so with that confidence, I kind of started to think that maybe I could do this. And throughout the next few years, I stuck with the plan of trying to get my prereqs out of the way first and then applying to vet school early. And I thought, worst case, if I don't get in, then I've gotten all of my tough classes out of the way, and then my senior year is going to be pretty nice. And also, if things get too hard and I'm not getting the grades that I want, I could always just start taking major classes, kind of lighten the load a little bit, and just take 4 years and get a bachelor's degree. And getting this plan in order was easier said than done. It was still really tough to get all of my prereqs done in 3 years. I still remember my mom and I making all of these big Excel spreadsheets because some prereqs needed to be taken before others, and some were only offered in the spring or were only offered in the fall. And yeah, I just remember bringing all of these spreadsheets to my academic advisor, and it was a lot, but we got the job done, we figured it out, and it was all worth it. I also wanted to try to apply early because I honestly did not think that I was going to get in on my first try. And all of my professors and my advisors, you know, they all encouraged me to have a plan B because vet school is really hard to get into. And I think my plan B would have been to get my bachelor's and then to get a master's in public health. But yeah, hearing that over and over again, that vet school is super hard to get into and that you need a plan B, you know, you start to believe it. You start to believe that you'll have to use it and that you won't get in. And I thought, at least this way, if I apply early and I don't get in, but I get in on my second try, then at least, you know, I would still feel like I'm on time in a way. And just a little disclaimer, you know, I felt that pressure when I was in undergrad to be on time, but I really, you know, you gotta just do what's right for you. If it takes you 3 or 4 times to get into vet school, or if you take a gap year, like, all roads to vet school are great and all roads are just as, you know, valid as any other. So, you know, I have friends who are all different ages and some of them had, you know, different careers before they started vet school. So I encourage people to try to not feel the same pressure that I felt, that you have to do undergrad and that you have to go straight into vet school. If that isn't what ends up working out for you, like, that's okay, and that's not going to, you know, hurt you at all in the long run, and in fact it might just help you. I'll also say one of the biggest tips I have for getting into vet school is where you apply and how many schools you apply to. I always tell people that, you know, try to apply to the least expensive schools. The ones that I applied to, I ranked them on price and whether or not they allowed me to apply without a bachelor's degree. And I also applied to 7 schools, and I think that's really important too. Keep in mind that I was rejected to the majority of the schools that I applied to. I applied to 7 schools and I could sit here and say, hey, look, you know, I got into vet school a year early and I got into 3 schools, which is amazing and true, but you know, I was also rejected by 4 schools, and I always try to stop and make this a point to people who are applying to vet school to apply to a handful of schools, and I try to air them away from applying to just one, because, you know, had I only applied to those 4, I wouldn't have gotten into vet school that cycle. And that sounds really obvious, but you know, if it's compatible with your lifestyle, I would really stress that you try to apply to a few schools instead of just your in-state. And keep in mind that there are schools that allow you to gain residency after your first year, and that means you can get in-state tuition, and that can just take a whole lot of out-of-state schools and make them a really viable option. So yeah, I was accepted to 3 schools and I ended up going with my least expensive option. It was one of those schools that allowed me to gain residency after my first year. I stayed at my school over the summer and I got a research job, and I had to make a certain amount of money and stay in the state for a certain amount of days out of the summer, and then I got residency, and I was also able to get in-state tuition for 3 out of 4 years, which I think is really great, and it really made an out-of-state school a viable option for me. Then I dropped out of college and I didn't get a bachelor's degree. I didn't have a undergrad graduation or graduation ceremony, and I worked at a research lab for the majority of that summer. And then my parents came to visit me and we did one big campus tour, kind of as like a farewell. And then I just went home and I enjoyed my last few weeks of summer, and then I went off to vet school. And yeah, so that's my story. And doing this, I realized that I really want to do a series where I talk through each year of vet school, what I remember, what I went through, what I learned, and let me know if that's something you guys are interested in. Comment down below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a video. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.